going back to a moment in history where things didn't just simmer. They violently boiled over. Picture this. It's Boston, 1770. A city that feels less like a quiet colonial port and more like a human pressure cooker.
That's the perfect way to put it. This wasn't just ordinary unrest. I mean, this city was the economic engine of the colonies, but its people felt completely powerless.
And the root of that fury was, as it often is, control. Specifically, control through taxes. King George III and the British Parliament kept passing these laws, like the Townshend Acts.
Right, taxing everything. Tea, paper, you name it. And the colonists had absolutely no voice, zero representation in the government that was making these demands.
So you get that famous rallying cry, no taxation without representation, and to make sure those incredibly unpopular laws were followed.
Yeah, the British sent troops, and not just a few. We're talking about a massive military presence, hundreds of soldiers living right there among the people.
Which you can imagine was a social disaster. Suddenly, your neighborhood is flooded with these armed, occupying forces. They were young men in these bright red coats, which made them stick out.
Earned them insults. People called them redcoats, or the really nasty one, lobsterbacks.
They competed for jobs, for lodging, and that their presence was this constant source of friction. Fights were breaking out almost daily. So by early 1770, the whole city was just ready to explode.
Exactly. So today what we're going to do is look at the events of one very cold night.
And more importantly, how a tragic street fight with only a handful of deaths was. Well, it was carefully transformed into one of the most powerful symbols on the road to the American Revolution.
We're looking at how the Boston Massacre was basically invented. And that transformation, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the night of Monday, March 5th, 1770, and it was not a pleasant night to be outside.
No, not at all. The weather was a huge factor. The ground was cold, covered in ice, and packed down snow. It was dark. It was freezing.
And the whole thing starts small. It starts outside the Custom House on King Street. That building was a real symbol of British authority because that's where they collected all those hated taxes.
And there's a lone British sentry, Private Hugh White, just standing guard.
A young apprentice apparently walks by, says something insulting about an officer, and that's the spark. A small group of locals starts to gather.
And what do you do when you're an angry crowd on a winter night?
You throw what's available.
Exactly. Snowballs, chunks of ice, any hard frozen stuff they could find. The insults get louder, and now Private White is surrounded, calling for backup.
And here's where the chaos really escalates. This detail is fascinating. Church bells start ringing like crazy across the city.
Which for colonists usually meant just one thing: fire.
Right, so hundreds of people who have no idea what's happening at the Custom House, they rush into the streets to go fight a fire.
And they all run straight toward the noise, which is right where this confrontation is happening.
So this tiny mob just explodes in size almost instantly. Captain Thomas Preston, he hears the noise, realizes his sentry is in big trouble, and he leads a small detachment out.
A very small one. Just 7 soldiers with bayonets fixed on their muskets. They have to push through this surging crowd to get to Private White.
They finally get there, and they form a defensive position, a kind of semicircle, with their muskets pointed out. Now, just try to imagine this scene. It's dark, people are shouting, bells are ringing, and they're getting pelted with ice and rocks.
And Preston is trying to get the crowd to go home, to just disperse. But they are way beyond listening.
They're yelling things like, "Fire! Why don't you fire?" Basically daring them, calling them cowards.
Yeah, and they're not just yelling. They're hitting the soldiers' muskets with wooden sticks, throwing heavy clubs. This was a violent physical assault.
And this is a really critical point. The soldiers were under strict orders. They could not fire their weapons unless Captain Preston gave them an explicit command.
That must have been terrifying. To have that rule, that constraint, while you're being attacked by a violent mob. It was a horrible situation for everyone involved.
And then it happens. The point of no return. How did the shooting actually start?
The chaos just peaked. One of the soldiers, many sources say it was Private Montgomery, gets hit hard by a piece of wood, a heavy club. He actually falls down.
Okay.
He gets back up, and either out of panic or pain, he fires his musket into the crowd. No command was given.
And after that first unauthorized shot?
It was like a chain reaction.
Right.
The sound of that musket, the sight of the first person falling, the other soldiers started firing within seconds.
And it's still a mystery, isn't it? Did Preston actually give an order that got lost in the noise, or did the men just panic?
It's very likely they just reacted. You know, self-preservation and all that noise and confusion, it's hard to imagine any order being heard clearly.
The result was devastating. 3 colonists were killed right there on the street. 2 more died later from their wounds. A total of 5 people.
And one of the men killed was Crispus Attucks. He was a man of mixed African and Native American heritage, and he's remembered as one of the very first to die, which makes him a really powerful martyr for the cause of liberty.
So the next morning, Boston wakes up to this blend of shock and just pure rage. How did the acting governor, Thomas Hutchinson, stop the whole city from erupting into a full-scale riot?
He had to move fast. His first step was to make a promise to everyone in Boston, a solemn promise. Captain Preston and all the soldiers involved would get a fair, open trial under colonial law.
And what about the troops? To defuse the immediate threat.
They moved them out immediately. All the British soldiers were pulled from the city center and sent to a fort out in the harbor. That physical separation was absolutely essential. It let the city breathe and begin the legal process.
So the legal process begins, but at the same time, another process starts. A political one.
Precisely. This is where leaders like Samuel Adams and the Sons of Liberty show their political genius. Even though 5 deaths isn't, technically a massacre,
They immediately brand it as one.
they immediately brand it the Boston Massacre. And that was an extreme, calculated choice of words.
A riot or a brawl would suggest both sides were at fault, wouldn't it?
Exactly. But a massacre implies something else entirely. It implies intentional, cruel, unprovoked slaughter by tyrants.
And for people outside of Boston who are just reading about this in pamphlets,
It worked perfectly. The name itself became the headline. It spread like wildfire through the colonies, telling everyone that the British weren't just enforcing laws, they were murdering citizens. That word massacre, it just stuck.
but their most effective weapon wasn't a word, it was a picture. Paul Revere, the silversmith, created this engraving.
An engraving that became one of the most effective pieces of propaganda in American history. His picture, The Bloody Massacre, wasn't history. It was political engineering, designed from top to bottom to create hatred for the British.
So when you look at that famous image today, you're not seeing what happened, you're seeing a lie. Let's break down the distortions he put in there.
Okay, there are 4 big ones. First, just the basics. Look at Revere's picture. The whole thing seems to be happening in bright daylight.
But we know it happened in the middle of a dark, icy night. Why change that?
Because daylight makes it look planned, controlled, intentional. It removes all the chaos and panic that might make you sympathize, even a little, with the soldiers.
Okay, what's distortion number 2?
The soldiers' formation. Revere draws them in this perfect, straight line, like an execution squad, with their officer behind them giving the order to fire.
But that's not what happened at all.
Not even close. They were in a messy semicircle, and Captain Preston was actually standing in front of his men, trying to stop them from firing. The picture makes him look like a cold-blooded commander.
And the crowd itself, in the engraving, they look like respectable, well-dressed citizens.
Distortion number 3. It was mostly working-class guys, sailors, laborers who were in the crowd. By drawing these gentlemen, Revere makes the victim seem more sympathetic to a wider, wealthier audience.
And the biggest distortion of all, what did he leave out completely?
The colonists' weapons. There are no snowballs, no rocks, no clubs being thrown in his picture. The colonists look completely peaceful and helpless. He just deleted the entire reason the soldiers felt threatened in the first place.
So that's propaganda. It's designed to make you feel an emotion rage, sympathy, not to teach you history, which makes the trial that followed even more remarkable.
It's the big twist in the story. The man who steps up to defend these hated British soldiers is none other than John Adams.
A leading patriot. Why would he take that risk?
Wow.
Defending the men his own side was calling murderers?
Because Adams believed in a principle. He believed that every single person deserved a fair trial based on facts and law, not on public anger or a political cartoon.
And his defense was built on that idea. He argued they fired in self-defense against a dangerous mob. He famously told the jury, facts are stubborn things.
Basically, he was telling them, look at the real evidence from that night. The ice, the clubs, the fear not the emotional story in Paul Revere's engraving. And, well, it worked.
The jury acquitted most of them. Captain Preston and most of his men were found not guilty.
2 soldiers were found guilty, but of the lesser crime of manslaughter. And their punishment was memorable. They were branded on their thumbs with a hot iron and then released.
The fact that a patriot like Adams could successfully defend them showed the world that the colonies were capable of justice, not just mob rule. That's a powerful statement.
But the verdict didn't kill the story. The propaganda was just too powerful. The Boston Massacre became this lasting symbol of British tyranny.
And the revolutionaries made sure no one forgot. Every year on March 5th, they held these big meetings in
Oh
Boston.
yeah, these were strategic political events. Orators would give these fiery speeches about the massacre and the dangers of a standing army. It kept the memory and the anger alive.
And that shared memory helped unify the colonies, didn't it? It gave them a common enemy, a shared story of suffering under British rule.
Absolutely. And you have to remember the timeline. This all happened in 1770. The first real shots of the war at Lexington and Concord weren't until 1775.
That's a 5-year gap. And in those 5 years, the memory of blood on King Street, fueled by Revere's powerful image, just made it impossible to rebuild any kind of trust with Great Britain.
That one image, that one word, massacre, helped turn thousands of neutral colonists into patriots. It planted the seeds of revolution using emotion, not just logic.
So it's really a powerful lesson about how much images and stories can shape public opinion even today.
Totally. The story of the Boston Massacre shows that controlling the narrative is everything. If you go to Boston today, you can actually see a circle of stones in the pavement marking the exact spot.
A small, tragic street fight that changed the course of history, all because of how it was named and how it was drawn.
It's a good reminder to always question the images and the stories you see. Propaganda is not a new invention.
See you next time.